Max Verstappen has won his 4th consecutive championship, and obviously he is slowly but surely paving the way as one of the greatest to drive in the sport. But considering that in 70% of the season he didn't have the fastest car, he made sure to drop a proper bombshell on Norris and Hamilton regarding the championships, in which he actually had competition on the grid. But will this motivate Norris in order to become a greater and more complete driver next year? And more importantly, can Hamilton redeem his revenge from 2021 with a different team? It's safe to say that 2024 has given us some of the most interesting races in the history of the sport, and it's the first season in which 7 drivers have won 2 or more races in a season. But even with that, Verstappen managed to secure the 4th championship in his career, and there is no doubt that it's arguably the best out of all of them, with 2021 maybe in the mix. But Verstappen has been labelled as the driver who had the fastest car by a mile in 2022 and 2023, and that's why many expected that 2024 was going to be a walk in the park, especially after the first 5 races of the season. But Verstappen himself believes otherwise and said that there is a lot more behind his success, and that he would have definitely won the title in the cars that his competitors had in 2024 and 2021. When talking about it, Verstappen said, "The comments from Zak Brown only motivate me. If people are critical and think I can only win in the best car, I will prove them wrong. If I don't get credit for this now, I don't know what else I can do." Whether I would have become champion in the McLaren? Yes, and a lot sooner too. In 2021, in another car, I would have taken the title too. In 2022, it would have become more difficult because Ferrari was maybe a bit too fragile then, and last year, well, that would have been a bit trickier. This is the mind of a champion, and by saying that he would have won the championship much earlier in the McLaren car, goes on to prove one thing: he's not messing around when it comes to fighting at the front, regardless of the machinery he has. Of course, Verstappen wouldn't even probably bring himself into a situation to chase such a great deficit if he had the car that Norris had from Miami onwards. But then again, people are still going to find a way to hate on the Dutchman because he's speaking the truth and nothing but the truth. As for 2021, the comment is very controversial because we know how that season ended. Of course, it's not Verstappen's fault that the drivers had 1 lap of clean racing, and he utilised the most of it by pitting for fresh tyres. Hamilton knew that his team screwed up as soon as he passed right next to the pit lane and the safety car was already on. The situation developed the way it did, but being a title challenger for the first time in your career and barely making any mistakes, let alone surviving the impact of Silverstone and driving a recovery race in Budapest in 2021, is something that is definitely showing what type of driver Verstappen is. For Verstappen, even 2023 is a season in which teams and rivals went to underestimate his team because of the fact he's won 10 races in a row and won 19 out of the 23 contests we visited on the calendar. And that can be proven by the fact that in 2024, Verstappen has won the championship with arguably the 3rd fastest car on the grid, which was done 2 times so far in Formula 1 history, in 1982 and 1983, by Keke Rosberg and Nelson Piquet. When talking about the underestimation that he and his team received for 2023, Verstappen said, "Last year I had a dominant car, but I always felt that not everyone appreciated what we achieved as a team, winning 10 in a row. Of course, our car was dominant, but I wasn't as dominant, I think, as people thought it was. So that's for sure my best season, and I will always look back at, because even in places where maybe we didn't have the perfect setup, we were still capable, because in the race our car was always quite strong to win races. But I'm also very proud of this season, because for most of the season, I would say for 70% of the season, we didn't have the fastest car, but actually we extended our lead. So that is definitely something that I am very proud of." Who can blame Verstappen for an opinion like this? I definitely can't, because if we look at what Perez is doing in more or less the same car, even with his own request to change the chassis in Brazil, that resulted in miserable results for the Mexican driver. And of course, he was more or less provoked by comments made from Brown and Norris that Verstappen would need the fastest car on the grid in order to win the championship, and if he's to leave Red Bull, then he won't be able to win and compete. When talking about this, Zak Brown said, "I don't think without a star driver you're going to win, so you need both. First, it does start with the car. People ask me all the time, is it car or driver? And it's like, well, it's both. I think the way I characterize it is, I think there are 6-7 drivers on the grid that will be world champions in the Red Bull. As great as Max is, and he is one of the best ever, I don't think Max wins the World Championship today in any other car other than Red Bull. A horrendous take that didn't end well, but it is what it is, and we're now looking at one of the greatest drives in the sport and what could possibly be the best season that we've ever witnessed in 2025. This is the year in which Hamilton will start his revenge mission and hunt the 8th record-breaking championship, and it's also the year in which Norris will try to prove to the F1 world that he is, in fact, made out of championship material. And let's not forget Leclerc, who will have a lot to say about the Ferrari situation after the Las Vegas GP, as he will very likely be more and more selfish from now on, regardless of who his teammate is. But the British media, however, feel like Verstappen is far away from the greatest drivers in the sport because of one reason: he hasn't won a championship outside of Red Bull. Vettel hasn't done the same, but he is still considered one of the greatest drivers in the world, with 51 wins in an era that was dominated by the Austrian team. Nevertheless, the Telegraph wrote about Verstappen's legacy after he went on to secure the 4th consecutive championship, further proving the bigotry that's present between them and Verstappen, as the paper went on to say, Max Verstappen must leave Red Bull to become a Formula One legend. Teams sponsored by an energy drink do not stir the same emotions as Ferrari and Mercedes. Does he dare forsake the carefully curated Red Bull brand for some true F1 heritage? If he hopes to cement his legend for posterity, he needs to make the leap sooner rather than later. However, we're talking about a team that's 6th in the all-time list of Constructors' Championships, within touching distance of Lotus and only 2 behind Mercedes and McLaren. For example, McLaren has been present in the sport since 1996, whereas Red Bull joined in 2006. So to still call the team an energy drink one is kind of disrespectful, especially if you see what type of drivers it's produced, starting with Vettel, Verstappen and Ricciardo, and ending with Lawson, who is showing huge promise for the future. With all this in mind, do you think that Verstappen's comments regarding winning the championships in the cars of his rivals were legitimate ones? And if so, do you think that if he wins the championship in 2025 with Red Bull, he will definitely cement his legacy as one of the greatest to ever do it in the sport? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're interested in the latest drama ravaging Ferrari after the Las Vegas GP, make sure to check out the video that's appearing on your screen right now.